Have you ever watched a movie and asked yourself, is there something more to the story? Now, what if the answer to that was in another movie that you never even considered? Two movies, no shared characters, no shared plot. Today we see if American History X and Death to Smoochy tell one continuous story. This isn't even a fan theory on the internet. This is something that a friend of mine told me about and it caught my interest. For this type of video, I could probably do a review on both of these movies by memory, but I would not want to take away from the possibility of a great experience. So after I watch these films, I'm gonna weigh in on whether or not this is a completely half-baked theory or Mythbusters style, boom, it's confirmed type thing, okay? So just stick with me real quick. But first, a tale of the tape of these movies, just to make sure that we know exactly what they're all about. American History X is a film from 1998 directed by Tony Kaye and stars Edward Norton, Edward Furlong, and Beverly D'Angelo. The story takes place in Venice Beach, California, where Edward Norton plays a character named Derek Vinyard, who happens to be a
badass peckerwood with an attitude.
He lives a life of hate and violence, and suddenly, near the end of the film, has a reckoning and tries to save his little brother Danny from following in his footsteps. My overall impression of this film is that it's extremely powerful. I don't recommend this film to everybody. There's a lot of really awful hate language in it, and if you are sensitive to that kind of stuff, I do not recommend it. Now, moving on, Death to Smoochy is a film from 2002 and directed by Danny DeVito. This one stars Edward Norton, Robin Williams, rest in peace, my dude, and Catherine Keener. Now, this story takes place in New York City, where a kids show host named
Rainbow fucking Randolph
is fired, and his replacement, Smoochy the Rhino, played by Norton, finds himself as the rising star. Turns out, as the film progresses, it shows a world where kids' TV isn't really child-friendly. My impression of this movie, now, first of all, I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to see Death to Smoochy. I do think that this is one of the single most underrated comedies of all time. It touches on a lot of stuff in 2002 that we don't hear about until much, much later. And for that, I truly appreciate this movie as time goes. It aged very well. Overall impression of Death to Smoochy is a standalone, hilarious, fun to watch. It gets a little dark in some spots, but it's funny dark. It's like, you know, a kid show host that's supposed to be squeaky clean dealing with the Irish mob kind of funny. But that's not why you're here. We're here to talk about The Claim. Before we get into the claim of this conspiracy, I want you all to know that there are going to be some serious spoilers. So if you haven't seen these films and you want to see them with a fresh mind, please skip the rest of this video and come back later. I'm not going to be mad and it's going to hurt my click-through rate, but I do not care because this is super important. But if you don't care about spoilers, keep watching because I'm probably just going to rattle off a bunch of them for the rest of this video. The claim is after Derek Vinyard gets out of prison for his crimes and his brother gets murdered, he does end up bringing down the gang that he ran with through the LAPD. As a result of doing this, he gets put into witness protection because they understand that he might be, you know, a target. Now, fast forward in that 4-year gap between the two films, the claim is that Derek Vinyard is no longer Derek Vinyard. He's now Sheldon Mopes, the character in Death to Smoochy. Now, what makes this claim so ridiculous is that you have literally two extremes. On one hand, you have an absolute
badass peckerwood with an attitude.
And on the other hand, you have this lovable, friendly, doesn't do anything wrong kind of guy. So I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to watch these films, have some snacks, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk to you about what evidence supports these claims and then what evidence does not support these claims. Okay, I'm back. This one could actually get a little ridiculous. I have my notes. At the end of American History X, or somewhere near the middle to end, there's a bit where Dr. Sweeney, the role model teacher in this story, has a discussion with Derek while he's in the infirmary in prison and asks him,
"Has anything you've done made your life better?"
Now, I think if you want to have this as supporting evidence, this is going to be one of those bits of like the moment of reckoning. Not only does this line mark a major turning point in the film where Derek realizes that he's made the wrong decisions, but I feel like this is that little dot that just connects the next chapter of this whole thing. It's one of those lines that when you hear it, you're like, wow, that's really powerful. But then as I'm watching Death to Smoochy, it was kind of one of those things that just kept replaying in the back of my mind of like, is there anything that you've done that's made people's lives better? And this might have been Mr. Mopes's quest for renewal. New me, new leaf, Now in Death to Smoochy, there are a lot of very interesting coincidences that take place throughout that film that make me realize that while Sheldon Mopes is a squeaky clean do-gooder, doesn't do anything wrong, he even winces when people swear in front of him or say things that are sexually oriented. He gets a little like, ugh. I think this kind of goes hand in hand where he's kind of trying to hide who he used to be. And considering the fact that one movie took place in Venice Beach and the other movie took place in a place that looks like New York City, I feel like there's something going on here. The three scenes in Death to Smoochy that stick out, one of them is the scene where his agent hands him a gun. There is a moment where he's frightened that he was handed a firearm. And along with it, his agent asks him a question along the lines of like, what, you never had a gun before? Or you never seen a gun?
No. I've never owned a gun. I don't believe in them. Really?
He's very shy about having a gun in his hand. It could be that he's a convicted felon from his past life, or it could be that there's some PTSD that's ongoing from the incident that took place that put him in jail in the first place. There is a moment where he has this like potential crash out where he's just about to lose his mind and he talks about rage. He does this a few times throughout the movie.
You get out!
No, you don't get to tell this boy what to do anymore, you uptight.
I'm gonna halt here. I don't know if you're familiar with HALT. It's a self-recognition technique. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. That's
During some of these, he discusses something that he learned in anger management class.
Yeah, I got ordered to take this anger management class.
Anybody can go to anger management, I understand, but there are probably some programs in prison systems here and there, especially in the 90s, where they started implementing things like anger management, behavioral management, things like that. The two supporting details that really, really drive this theory home are one where near the end of Death to Smoochy, where he's about to just go ham and go after the people that are trying to ruin him and kill his friend. He grabs that gun that he was handed in the beginning of the movie and he's loading it and he's getting ready to rumble. And this is the part where Catherine Keener starts panicking. He says,
I appreciate everybody's concern, but I know what I'm doing.
Now, what squeaky clean guy says, I know what I'm doing when he didn't have a checkered past? Just saying. And the second most powerful argument for this theory is when he's about to take out this evil guy that's like running this whole like cabal of kids TV. I do like the ring of that. But anyway, the bad guy, the main antagonist in the film, as he's about to get taken care of in one way or another, Edward Norton says,
You just fucked with the wrong rhino, pal.
which sounds remarkably similar to the line that he said in American History X.
You just fucked with the wrong bull.
With the arguments for, there are also arguments against this theory. There are a couple that stand out, and I have to talk about these plot holes so that you could kind of make your own informed decision. The first one being in American History X, he had a lot of very bad tattoos. I'm not going to show all of them to you because I'm pretty sure I would get deplatformed real quick for something like this. But In Death to Smoochy, there is one scene where he takes off his costume or his clothes and he doesn't have the long sleeves. There was, and I will say, there was a remarkably long amount of time where Edward Norton wore full sleeves and everything to cover up his arms and stuff. So I was a little wary of this, but in somewhere in the middle when he takes off his suit and he's in his like undershirt, you can tell that he has no visible tattoos. So that is important. And yes, there is an argument that he could have just had them removed, but there was a lot of ink on that dude. I don't think that would have happened. And there would be some discoloration of some type. So I'm going to just go with a no on that. Another bizarre plot point is this really weird like health food thing that he goes on to in Death to Smoochy. Edward Norton's character is a health nut. He wants no dyes, no sugars, no artificial ingredients. He cares a lot about this stuff. And then he has this bizarre plant paste that he throws on soy hot dogs. And I'm pretty sure that that is not something that like you would just develop out of nowhere. And I think even if I was in witness protection, I would probably still enjoy cheeseburgers and pizza. I'm not changing that. Now, the third one we mentioned a little bit before, and it is, why was Derek Vinyard put in witness protection in the first place? He could have been put in witness protection by the LAPD because he was being asked by a police officer if he would be willing to help take down that gang.
We were kind of hoping that maybe you'd talk to your old crew.
Oh, come on.
This is
Come on,
not a
no
good
way.
thing.
He says no, and then he says kind of like a we'll talk, like later we'll talk about it, like, oh, we'll talk about it later. But then there is the catalyst of losing his brother that might have stirred up something. I can't see a situation in American History X where he would follow through with it based off of what happens, especially the fact that he would change his name and go from West Coast to East Coast. Like it just, that part really doesn't make sense. But I'm, like I said earlier, I'm totally willing to entertain this theory. Now for overall believability, I'm going to give this one on a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being the best. I'm going to give this one about an 85. Like I said, let's just assume that his tattoos were removed professionally. Let's assume that he decided to just take on an entirely different persona and go on a health food craze. And let's say that maybe his brother's death instigated within him the idea that he needed to take down this gang because it ruined his life. With all that said, the supporting evidence does paint a very good picture that Derek Vinyard was in fact Sheldon Mopes in Death to Smoochy. This could be a pretty believable story. I mean, if you look at this checkered past from this old life that he lived and all this other stuff, it does kind of show points in the film where he could have been that guy. There is another thing that caught my attention. I have heard in the past that Edward Norton likes to take lines from previous movies that he was in and inject them into newer movies that he's in. And honestly, I think that's kind of funny because it's like, it's almost as if he's made his own cinematic universe, the Edward Norton cinematic universe, that is. So it does lend a little bit of credibility to what I'm saying here. But like I said, I would give this one about a B, like a solid B out of the grading scale. But it's really not about what I think. What do you think? Go ahead and drop a comment. Tell me what you think of all this, of this video. If you've seen both movies, tell me any supporting evidence or disproving evidence that I didn't catch. And if you haven't seen these movies, never fear. I got you. The Fanny Pack Ops is always going to bring the good news. You can go to internetarchive.org. I'm going to put the link in the description of this video. That way there you have it. Go to internetarchive.org. This is a nonprofit group. They're not affiliated with anybody like the MPA or the US government or anything. They just put movies up so that you can watch them for educational purposes or for things like this. And it's absolutely free. You don't even have to sign up for anything. You just go there, type in the film. There's some video games. There's a lot of stuff. It's pretty much all the old cool stuff that we grew up with. So check out internetarchive.org. That's where I go so that I didn't have to pay anybody for these movies. I believe American History X, you could rent it for like $4. And Death to Smoochy is definitely free on YouTube. So if you type in Death to Smoochy, it'll pop up and you get to watch it with ads. or, like I said, internetarchive.org. Best place in the world. In the meantime, go ahead and drop a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. And then if you have any other fan theories of your own that go with different movies, please tell me. I'd like to do more of these because they're actually kind of fun. In the meantime, thanks for coming by. Thanks for watching. Y'all stay safe and have an awesome day.